I took this at my daughter's 4th birthday party in January, and one of the things that really struck me is she's grown up into this little girl, and Bella has got this real sense of imagination at that age. If you've got kids, you'll know that when they're about 4, suddenly their minds just blossom and they want to be all sorts of different things. And she's got this infatuation with horses. I don't know where it came from. We're not a horsey family, but all that she wants to do is ride horses and be horses. And it's interesting looking at kids because they don't want to just play with an animal, they want to be the animal itself. And she pretends to be a tiger and a lion and whatever the fancy is of the day. She literally tries to inhabit that creature. And I come from a really outdoorsy background, and maybe that's where this whole horse obsession has come from. Maybe it's what she's taken away from my love of the outdoors that I've implicated on her. When I was a youngster, my favorite animal was an elephant, and I'm just realizing that the name of my talk, The Elephant in the Room, is maybe the butt of a joke that's going to happen in the staff room a little bit later. But I loved elephants, and I suppose when I was a chubby little toddler, like my daughter is, it was probably appropriate that I was pretending to be an elephant. So, this picture that you see in front of you was taken at Manqui Dam in the Pilanesberg. I'm lucky enough to be able to go there once a year, and it's one of my favorite places in the world. And there's a little story behind this, because usually Manqui has got this big hide that looks out over the dam, and it's just jam-packed with people. And it was absolutely quiet when we were there. It was late afternoon, and Bella was sort of throwing stones and bits of bread and things, which you're not going to throw, into the dam, and watching all the fish and the terrapins eat them. And this herd of elephant came meandering from the hills. And they got down to the water and they started thrashing around the mud. Some of them were submerged and they were sort of playing around with their trunks just visible above the surface of the water. And they were just having this good, happy fun, playing as a family. And there was lots of trumpeting and lots of noise. And even the youngsters were involved. And the three of us, my wife, Bella, and myself, were all just completely captivated by what was unfolding in front of us. And I wonder how many experiences like that I'm going to be able to have with Bella, but more importantly, how many experiences like that is she going to be able to have with her children and with the children's children? Because there's a real legacy of the outdoors in our family, and I wonder when that legacy is going to be broken. So what I want you to do now is I've shown you 2 pictures or 3 pictures of mine. I want you to have a look at your selfie that you took earlier. And as you look at that, I want you to focus on the features of your face, the shape of your mouth, if you're not particularly good looking like Luke. I see you getting a ribbon there. I want you to look at the colour of your skin, the tone that it's got, all of that. And I want you to think about what you've inherited from your parents, what you've inherited from your grandparents, and maybe what you've passed on to your children. And last off, I want you to look into your own eyes. Look at those eyes that are staring back at you. And what experiences do those hold? What sort of legacy do those eyes hold that you're going to pass on to everyone else who is in your same space? And then I want you to look up at this picture. And it's a little bit morbid, but just bear with me. So this is a skull from Homo naledi. If you haven't heard of her, she was discovered not far from here by Professor Lee Berger in the Cradle of Humankind. And this is human version 1.0. This is kind of the missing picture, the piece of the puzzle, which really helps us to find who we are. Because I think learning to where we're going in the future is only defined by knowing where we've come from in our past. So Professor Berger said it's the most significant and extensive discovery of early human relatives and fossils ever made on the continent of Africa. And it's not because Homo naledi had human-like arms and legs and feet and hands and ape-like torso, but it's because Homo naledi did something really significant which no other species has really done. This is what he said. We previously thought that burying your dead was a ritual that helped to define us as humans and was unique only to humans, but now it doesn't. So what other assumptions do we make about what it is to make us human that are completely false? Naledi was discovered in a place called the Chamber of Stars, and I think maybe that's a reference to our ancestors' place in the world, and the fact that they knew that they belonged to something greater than themselves. There was a legacy behind them. And if you look into her eyes, what do you see there of yourselves? What has she taken? What experiences has she had which we can maybe inherit from her? What experiences did she witness? Did Homo naledi look at a pod of, or a herd of elephants wallowing around in the shallows and have that same sense that I did, maybe mixed with a little bit of fear? And her children growing up, do they pretend to be animals just like my daughter pretends to be an animal? Even more than that, what connection did she have to nature, to that environment around her? How different is that to the connection that we've got? Maybe there's a bit of a break in that link somehow. So maybe we've lost perspective in our quest to dominate our environment. Maybe we should be a little bit more like Homo naledi. And maybe there's some sort of a paradigm shift that we need to have as humanity. When Bella plays, she tries to be the tiger, or the lion, or the elephant. She wants to be that animal. She doesn't want that animal to be like her. And I think that's maybe where we're getting it wrong. Maybe we've got something we can learn from our children. If you want another illustration, I was watching a David Attenborough documentary called Life Story. He's one of my childhood heroes. And he shows this herd of elephants in Kenya, led by this old weather-beaten matriarch. And she walks along to this old elephant graveyard. And there are the blistering white bones of her ancestors, of the old matriarchs. And what happens is really interesting, because the elephants go very, very quiet. Their stomach rumbling stops. They walk very, very slowly and gently, almost reverently. They take their trunks and they start touching and feeling these old bones. I think that's significant. And this is what David Attenborough said about it. You must try and imitate the voice. We cannot know, of course, what they are thinking. But there's a delicacy about the way that they touch these bones, which suggests some special relevance. And I tell you the story because while I'm telling it, I think most of you are thinking how incredibly human of these elephants. And I think that's where we've got it wrong. How incredibly elephant of us humans. I think we should be thinking about how similar we are to animals, not how similar they are to us. And that's where the problem is. Even in our language, we've made ourselves the center of everything. We've dominated absolutely everything. And we forgot that we're just a thread in the web of existence. We're not at the center of it. And while you think about this elephant, I've kind of come up with a solution. And it's in this box. I think all of the questions and all of the answers to our existential and environmental questions are right here in this box. And when I was growing up, I'd like to tell you a story about where we used to go on holidays in the Kruger Park. And I went right as a youngster. We used to camp initially, and then my parents thought that was too much like hard work. So when we were staying in the chalets, my favorite thing, and still my favorite thing, is to watch elephants. And there was this sort of standing joke in our family that when you went along the road and there was a big pile of elephant poo, you could get a pretty good idea about how fresh it was by sticking your finger in it and measuring the temperature. So I can't bring an elephant into the room, but I bought the next best thing, which is a big, hopefully big, pile of elephant poo. So no one's done this at Saints, I'm pretty sure. And the interesting thing about this, I'm sorry about the mess I'm making here, Kelly, is elephants are really ineffective digesters. They only digest about 50% of what they eat. And this is really important because as you break this stuff up, there are all sorts of little fibers and bits of bark and bits of trees. And all of this is really important because it doesn't just make a really good fertilizer, but it's the space where certain trees can only germinate. So the apple leaf acacia, the only thing that it can germinate through is an elephant's stomach or an elephant's gut. And it gets more than that. I know you can't really see this, but there are a whole bunch of eggs that are laid in here as well. And this is a food source for a range of different animals. And dung beetles are something which all of you know about. And without this, their livelihood wouldn't really happen. At the same time, the larva that they lay in this pile of poo becomes the food source for honey badgers. And if you think of something like a baobab tree, which Eric was talking about earlier, the reason why baobab trees germinate so well is because they've got some really good fertilizer to start off with. And elephants can walk for up to 54 kilometers before they drop their waste, I suppose. And the reason that I tell you this, and this inefficiency, is because without this, the environment would suffer completely. And just by taking a crap, an elephant somehow manages to benefit the environment. And I think it's quite a far cry from what we do in the bathroom. So I think without them, the whole environment would be slightly fractured. But it's not about elephant poo, it's also about how they are ecological engineers. So because of their size, obviously elephants push down huge big trees, and they can change forest into grassland. At the same time, they can change the course of rivers, because as they wallow in their banks, they change the way that they'll meander. They convert puddles into really big dams. So they literally change the geology of where they live. And I think that that's quite significant when you compare it to us, where we expect the geology to change for the betterment of us instead of for the betterment of everyone else. Elephants have a sense of smell that's 1,000 times stronger than a dog, 1,000 times stronger. And this allows them to smell water under the ground. So in really dry periods, elephants can find water, they can dig holes and make an area where other animals can try and get some form of sustenance and stop them from dying. So this is known as a trophic cascade, and you may have heard it on Mr. Knowles' prize-giving evening when he showed something about the wolves of Yellowstone National Park, when he showed that clip. But basically what it means is there's one species that has an avalanche of really positive consequences for another species. Do we really do that as people? Can we say that our being here on Earth is for the ultimate benefit of everything else, big or small? If our worth is measured by our contribution to community, how do we compare to the elephant? I think we get so caught up in sex and race and diversity and all of that human bullshit, instead of just thinking about our place in the environment, in the natural world, and learning lessons from something like the elephant. We've lost our connection with the world, and particularly with the natural world. And instead of thinking that we're at the center of everything, we should try and think that we're just part of it. Because this whole connection doesn't have a beginning or an end. It's circular. It's a globe even. And this picture you've seen many times over. It's called the blue marble. But I wonder how many of us have actually really looked at it. So it was taken in 1972 when Apollo 17 orbited the Earth. And there are all sorts of cliches of fragility and perfection and insignificance and things. But for me, I just think it's breathtakingly beautiful. It's difficult to think that all of us, all of our problems, everything that exists is just on that tiny little blue marble. Jim Lovell, who is immortalized in Apollo 13, said this when he saw the Earth from the moon for the first time. We learned a lot about the moon, but what we really learned about was the Earth. The fact that you can put your thumb up and you can hide the Earth behind your thumb. Everything that you've ever known, your loved ones, your problems, your businesses, all of the problems of the Earth itself, just behind your single thumb. It's amazing how insignificant we really are, but then at the same time, how fortunate we are to have this body and to be able to enjoy a loving existence here amongst the beauty of the Earth itself. We're all trying to live out our little existence. We're all trying to pass on our own heritage, all of our experiences on that tiny little sphere. And whenever I see this image, I can't but think that we've really lost our way. And I think the only way to get back to the path is trying to reconnect with our elemental selves. And hopefully what I'm going to read now will give you an idea on how to find it. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger. You must ask permission to know it and to be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It answers. I've made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying, here. No two trees are the same to eagle, and no two branches are the same to crow. If what a tree of a bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must just let it find you. Thank you.